Hi guys, I'm the Movie Guy, and today I'm reviewing the Rogue One novel. I saw the movie, I loved it, just like The Force Awakens, and just like The Force Awakens, I bought the book. Because the book just gives a little bit more insight into certain things, certain aspects, characters, story, that the movie can't fully explain you, can't fully give you. Now, the thing is about spoilers and whatnot, I am not going to spoil the book, like what the book adds to the movie, but I am going to talk about what the book adds to the movie in a non-spoiler way, but I will talk about spoilers in the movie. It's basically that I assume you've seen the movie, and I assume that you just want to know if this book is worth it. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm not going to give a whole lot of spoilers for the book, if I can give spoilers for the book, because you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. I'm just gonna say this happens in the movie and this is the way that the book adds or detracts from it in any way. Now, before I start my actual review, I have to say I did reviews for Rogue One, like spoiler free and spoilery. I did 2 spoiler videos, and I had planned to do another spoiler video that, a little bit of story. I planned to do that spoiler video, the last one, which would be like every other thing that I had to say about the movie, in the week after Christmas. But in the week after Christmas, something happened that hit me a lot harder than I thought it would have, which was, of course, Carrie Fisher passing away. I was not able to really talk about Star Wars without bursting into tears because she died, because it really hit me emotionally. It really is something for me, because Princess Leia is such a big thing, has been a big thing in my life. So I really could not put myself in front of a camera at that point and talk about Star Wars. And then a few days later, when I was able to talk about things again, I figured out, I have to do my end of the year list. So really, a lot of things that came in the way of it, and all those things made me not make the video. But I have made the script. I'm going to shoot it very soon. I'm going to upload it very soon. I'm not entirely sure why, but just look out in the next couple of days for my last spoiler-filled video about Rogue One, and I think I will have said all the thoughts that I have on Rogue One. Anyway, let's begin the review about the novel, because the novel is again written by Alexander Freed, and Alexander Freed wrote another book in the Star Wars canon called Battlefront Twilight Company, which is a book that I still haven't finished yet. I'm like page 312 out of 400, and I've been on that page for like a month or 2 months. I'm not sure. I forgot about it because, the book is not that great. I didn't like it as much as others. I know some people really do like it, but the only part I really liked was the second part, when it takes place during the Battle of Hoth and Empire Strikes Back. The rest of the story, like the characters weren't that interesting to me. The story just wasn't that interesting to me for some reason. I don't know. It's just, it didn't get me. So I was a little bit conservative going into the Rogue One novel, because it's of course written by the same author. However, I'll say the Rogue One novel is a lot better than Twilight Company. I will even say that the Rogue One novel is better than the Force Awakens novel, and I really like the Force Awakens novel in terms of how it added to the movie. This adds even more to the movie, especially because, the movie does have some certain issues that I think the book fixes for the most part. I think that one of the biggest complaints about Rogue One is that it doesn't give us as great characters as the ones in the Force Awakens. Like, Jyn Erso just isn't as good as Rey. I've seen a lot of people say that Rey is just a better character, and all those kind of things. Like, all the characters in Rogue One are just not as good as the Force Awakens, simply because Rogue One doesn't focus too much on characters. While I like most of the characters, mostly due to strong performances in the movie, the characters themselves are not all that well fleshed out, and I've already said this somewhere online. I think Rogue One could have benefited from being a 3-hour movie, just being 3 hours long and focusing a lot on character study. Like, give us more backstory into characters, just tell us more about who these characters are, what they come from, because the movie just doesn't do that too much. And what the book really did is show a little bit more backstory, and especially show their thoughts during everything, because what the movie doesn't do too well, in my opinion. I mean, it does it well. It's something that I had guessed at already, but the book really focuses well on that, is their feelings during all this. Because in the movie, you see Jin Erso being in a prison at the very beginning, in a labor camp, and that's pretty harsh, you'd say. But the movie doesn't really focus on that. It doesn't really show you Jin in the labor camp, in prison, doing things there, having a hard time there. It's like, okay, she's in prison, and now she gets rescued by the Alliance, and then she goes to Yavin 4, and they don't really focus on what her life there was. The book does. The book shows her thoughts, like how a little bit of her life on Wobani was in the Imperial labor camp, which is quite harsh. And the movie doesn't really show it, but it's something that I guessed at. Like, she doesn't get a whole lot of sleep or rest or just food. She is constantly in action. Like, she goes from Wobani to Yavin 4, from Yavin 4 to Jeddah. From Jeddah, she has to get out there in the nick of time to evade the Death Star. Then she has to go to Edu. On Edu, she finds her father again. Her father dies in her arms, but she has to get out of there. She has to go to Yavin 4 to talk to the Alliance. After she talked to the Alliance, she has to go to Scarif, and then she dies. It's a lot to take in, and the movie just doesn't focus too well on that, and the book does. The book really made me care about Jin Erso a lot more than the movie ever could, and yeah, like, the movie could have done with a 3-hour cut that explained a little bit more about that. By the way, not just Jin Erso, but also like the other characters, Cassian as well, Bodhi, Chirrut, Base, K2SO even though like he doesn't get worn out because he's a droid, so he can go on for a long time, but it does follow K2's thoughts, and it's actually quite interesting to read a little bit more into his thoughts, like his thought process as a droid. I think the most important thing, though, is a scene that I just had an issue with ever since I saw the movie for the first time. Borgullet! Seriously, another CGI squid in a Star Wars movie. I was like, really? And in the movie, you don't really feel anything about that scene. It's like the scene comes, it's really weird, out of place, in my opinion, and it doesn't do anything. It doesn't show Bodhi having issues with it. The book does. The book shows Bodhi's thoughts during that scene, after the scene, and really that up until the moment that he dies in the shuttle on Scarif, he thinks about Borgullet constantly, and it does have an effect on him. And it does show that he does have messed up thoughts after Borgullet touched him. So, especially like right after that scene, up until like Edu, only on Edu does he fully comprehend everything, and he's like, okay, now I can properly think anymore. That's something that the movie just doesn't show at all. Like, I never felt that that Borgullet scene had any impact on the rest of the movie, but the book really shows it does, and that's something that, yeah, it's a lot more interesting. So now when I see the movie, I can just think about what Bodhi's thoughts are and how it does affect him, instead of focus on the fact that it's pretty bad CG, because I know that the creature itself is a practical effect, but the tentacles aren't. The tentacles that are on his body are clearly CG, and the fact that everything around it in the image at that point is real. Like, the human is real, everything in the background is real, so the fact that you see CGI tentacles which aren't perfectly animated, yeah, no, I am taken out of that moment because of the fact that I know it is CG. So yeah, that pissed me off in the movie, but I'm more okay with it. It's still not the greatest scene, but I'm more okay with it. It's not as much of an issue as it was. Now, the thing that I thought was my favorite character to follow in the book was Krennic, because if you've read Catalyst, and seriously, I cannot recommend this book enough. If you haven't read it yet, you have to, because this follows Krennic for a big part, and you see his thoughts, and his thoughts during Catalyst already are quite interesting. And then in the movie itself, Krennic is pretty much what I know from Catalyst, but you don't really get his thoughts, so it was a little weird to have that transition. Like, I know the character from the book, and then I see him in the movie. However, in the Rogue One novel, you of course get his thoughts, and it was exactly the Krennic I knew from Catalyst. Actually, you get some references to Catalyst, which of course for me is like, oh my god, I know that from Catalyst, and see it back in the book. It's awesome, it's great, of course. So that's something I really like, just following Krennic. And of course, like, Krennic's rivalry with Tarkin. Like, Krennic really doesn't like Tarkin, but, like, Tarkin is in power too. He is there too, and he is as much as a part of the Death Star as Krennic is. Even though Krennic did build the Death Star, at least for the most part. Like, people say that Galen built it. No, Galen helped with the construction of the weapon. And sabotaged it, of course. Krennic made the Death Star. That project was his ever since the beginning of Catalyst. So yeah, it really was funny to see Tarkin versus Krennic in both Catalyst already, and now even in the movie, and especially more in the novel itself. Because that's something that kind of surprised me as well. Tarkin's thoughts are also in the book. This, for me, was the first time that we see Tarkin in a book that is canon, which is not written by James Luceno, because we've got this book, Tarkin, written by James Luceno. We had Catalyst, written by James Luceno, who really knows how to write Tarkin, and that's a really good thing. If you've not read Tarkin, you should, because it really is a good book in terms of, like, if you want more backstory to who Tarkin is, what his involvement is in the Death Star, why he's there in Rogue One, and just, like, it fits perfectly after Catalyst. Like, when Catalyst finishes, Tarkin starts, so you can read that. And I was like, okay, so is Alexander Freed going to be able to write Tarkin? Well, yeah, pretty much. It really was the Tarkin that I knew from the Tarkin novel and from the movie. Like, Tarkin has become one of my favorite characters ever. He's in my top 10 of favorite characters in Star Wars because of his depth that I got through the books and through the series. But besides Tarkin, there are some other classic characters you follow as well, like a Mon Mothma, and that was quite interesting to see. But also, especially like with the ending scene, how are you going to do the ending scene? Darth Vader in the hallway, which is like my favorite scene ever. Just in any movie ever, that's my favorite scene. So I was like, how are you going to describe that in a book? Through whose perspective? Are you going to show it through this perspective of a rebel, or I don't really know. It's Darth Vader that you follow at that point, which was really cool for me. And it was the Vader that I knew from Lords of the Sith. It was the Darth Vader. It wasn't someone trying to write the thoughts of Darth Vader. No, it was Darth Vader. As the Darth Vader fanboy that I am a huge Darth Vader fanboy. Actually, not really fanboy, because I don't accept everything of Darth Vader, because the prequels... That's the reason I hate the prequels, because Anakin Skywalker, who's supposed to be Darth Vader, is horrible in that. But the thing is, when Darth Vader is done right, it's so much win for me. It's like, this is why I love Star Wars, because Darth Vader is fucking awesome. So that is what you get in the book, and that was really cool to see the ending scene through his eyes. Now, something that I do have to address, Mon Mothma. Mon Mothma, her thoughts and some of the documents, they actually show some documents, I'll show you in a little bit, are about certain events that happened recently before Rogue One. After the current point where we are in Rebels. And if you've seen the Rebels 3.5 trailer, you know that from now on they're really going to focus on the larger rebellion. You already see Mon Mothma in that trailer. And they're already hinting in this book towards certain events that happen between where we are in Rebels and Rogue One, which really makes me hyped for the next episodes of Rebels, where we are going to see more tie-ins. So that is going to be awesome. If you haven't seen Star Wars Rebels yet, the animated show on Disney XD, believe me, it's phenomenal. It is Star Wars. It's not too kiddie. It does have really dark episodes, especially like, just watch Twilight of the Apprentice, Part 2, Ahsoka versus Darth Vader. That's like one of the best things ever in Star Wars, in my opinion. So make sure that you watch Rebels, because you will get more of the references, and it's awesome. Speaking of Rebels, in the movie, we of course have some cameos. We get the General Syndulla reference. We get Chopper at one point, and the Ghost is seen several times. So I was looking in the book. I really was looking and just hoping for, give me something of Rebels. Now, there are, as I said, some hints, and it does acknowledge the fact that at one point there's a C1 astromech droid in the scene that Chopper indeed makes a cameo. Other than that, no Hera at all, no Ghost at all. There's no mention whatsoever of anything that we do see in the movie. So there is even less references or tie-ins to Rebels in the novel than the movie. So if you want your Rebels references, don't read the book because there's hardly anything in there, only some hints that you get in the rest of Season 3 and probably also Season 4. Which, is that a complaint? Yeah, in my case it is, because I really desperately wanted something of Hera. Yeah, that's me. Anyway, besides all the characters, I have to say that it does add to the story. It gives scenes a little bit more, just more. It just starts a scene earlier at sometimes and it ends a scene later at sometimes. Like, especially at the point when Krennic is visiting Darth Vader, there's a little bit more there, but during that time, they're traveling from Edu to Yavin 4. And you see a little bit more after the bickering between Jyn and Cassian, and the point that you see Jyn in front of all the Alliance members. What they added there, I thought was really interesting. A little bit more with Jyn, with Cassian, with Mon Mothma, with just the Alliance High Command, because you see the entire Alliance there, and it made me think, like, in the movie itself I was okay with it, but thinking about it, it's like, it's a little bit sudden for me. It's like, all of a sudden, all the Alliance is on Yavin 4 and Jyn has to give a speech. That comes a little bit out of nowhere, and the book made me realize that issue in the movie. Like, I didn't have an issue with it before, now I do, but thanks to the book I know the story that goes on, so I don't have the issue anymore. But the thing is, it comes a little bit out of nowhere, and it really gives a little bit more connection between those two scenes, because in the movie itself, you see the Darth Vader scene, which is an awesome scene of course, but you don't see anything happen to Jyn up until the point that she just talks to the Alliance High Command, which for me was really interesting to read in the book, like how it adds to the story. So there are certain things that just add to the story. And now something that I had to show, that I said before, sometimes you get these kind of pages. Those kind of pages show messages between certain people, like written messages, like emails or something. I mean, of course not emails, it's in a galaxy far, far away, but just like, someone takes a log. As I said, Mon Mothma has her diary where she writes in, like, where she says certain things about how she feels about the rebellion or how she feels about Jyn or whatever, and it really adds to the story in a good way that I thought was really interesting. Now, in terms of writing style, I was not really complaining about the writing style in Battlefront Twilight Company, because the writing style is fine. There are some difficult words, both in Battlefront Twilight Company and in this one, and it really does show that it is an adult novel. It should not be read by kids, it's really for adults, so there was just, I mean, I know my English pretty well, but my vocabulary sometimes fucks up, and then I have to look it up on Google Translate or whatever, but you know, for the most part I know what they're talking about, and it's pretty good to follow. It's not as detailed as like a Lucino. Like, Lucino is extremely detailed, and I know that people have a little bit of an issue with his writing style in terms of Catalyst and Tarkin and Plagueis. So don't really worry about too many details, too many long pieces of text. But it does, for me, explained enough. Like, not too much, but not too little. So for me, it was just enough, and I was really good with that. Now, in terms of complaints, I don't really have them. I have a few nitpicks. Like, there's a moment in the movie that Jyn is on Edu, and she grabs the rifle of the Stormtrooper, and she pushes the Stormtrooper off the platform, and he screams. And in the book, for some reason, it says that he never screamed, which was really, for me, like, it's not really in line with what the movie says. But, like, yeah, those are nitpicks. Those are really small things that, yeah, aren't really that important. One thing, though, that I do find important, 3PO and R2's cameo. I already said it. How are 3PO and R2 on Yavin 4 when Radis' ship with the Tantive 4 has already left the planet? Well, the book says that the ship has left the planet, and then it shows R2 and 3PO on Yavin 4. So please, anyone explain me how they got off, because at this point I don't think they got off. I just don't, and it really makes for a continuity error. Anyway, in the end, I think that whether you like the movie or not that much, I think you should read the Rogue One novel. It does add a lot to the story, to the characters. Like, I already loved the movie. I gave it a 10 out of 10. Not that the movie is a 10 out of 10. It definitely has flaws. Like, objectively, the movie's like a 7 or an 8 out of 10. But my bias makes me give it that high of a score. The book adds to it. The book makes the movie better, makes you understand certain things more. So as I said, whether you liked or didn't like the movie, the book is a good addition to it. Anyway, now that I've given my thoughts on the Rogue One novel, I wonder, have you read it, and if so, what did you think of it? Did you like it as much as I do, or do you think it didn't add a lot? Please, whatever you think, let me know in the comments below. Also, look out for my reviews for the 2 Aftermath books. I can only show you this one. The reason I can only show you this one, because this one I didn't burn. This one was okay. This one I kind of liked. The first Aftermath novel. I'm going to review those 2 because Empire's End, the 3rd, is coming out next month. The first Aftermath novel made me so pissed that I burned it. I physically burned it. I took a lighter, I went outside, and I burned the pages of that book. I didn't want to sell it because I don't want people to read it. I really do not. So look out for my review, but don't ever read Aftermath, because it's absolutely horrible. It reminded me of the prequels, of the bad things of the prequels. That's not to say that there aren't bad things, especially like Life Debt made me appreciate the first one more, because Life Debt adds to it, and it really is not that bad at all. It's pretty okay, pretty good. It's not one of my favorites, but it does give me more in terms of like what happened between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens. But the first one is so awful that I just burned that copy. So look out for my review for Aftermath in a few weeks. I think that, yeah, that'll definitely be my next book review. And as always, if you've liked my review and you want to see more of my movie, trailer, and Star Wars reviews, click right here.